All right, it's 6 o'clock, so we will start the February 21 Murray City Planning Commission meeting. And before we get into our agenda, I'll introduce you to the commissioners. Travis Ney, to your right, Maureen Patterson, Phil Markham, Sue Wilson, and our staff tonight, Jim McNulty and Jared Hall is here somewhere. He's coming in, and Zach Smallwood and Bryant Farnsworth. So with that, we'll give you a couple of rules and procedures for our meetings. First, if you have a mobile device, we'd ask you to please silence it. I will do mine right now. Or other device, turn those off and respect the other people in our meeting this evening. If you get a call or have a side conversation, to please take that out in the hallway. And if you're here for public comment, we absolutely want to hear your comment. We'll ask you to come to the podium, and we would request that if you're speaking for yourself, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if you're speaking for a group, we'll give you 5 minutes to make your comments. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 1, which is approval of the Planning Commission meeting of February 7th, and I've asked the commissioners if they've reviewed the minutes and have any comments.
Nope, they looked good.
We had a few editorial comments in our pre-meeting, so other than the editorial comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the February 7th Planning Commission minutes as written.
All right,
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right. Item number 2, conflict of interest. Do any commissioners have conflict of interest on any of the agenda items this evening?
No.
No. All right, thank you. And item number 3, approval of finding of facts. We've got 3 conditional use permits. You've had opportunity to review those.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, if you don't have any comments per those, I'd entertain a motion as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the findings of fact for the February 7th meeting pertaining to conditional use permits for the Gregory accessory dwelling unit, conditional use permit for Marathon Electric, and a conditional use permit for Posse Athletics.
All right. All right, I have a motion. Here, I have a second.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Great. So, item number 4, the Wynwood subdivision requesting a temporary conditional use permit to allow temporary parking lot at the address 709 West Wynwood Park Drive for a model home to be located across the street on adjacent properties, address 708 West Wynwood Park Drive. And Zach Smallwood's going to tell us about this one.
Great. So, yeah, this is just a conditional use permit. It's a temporary conditional use permit to allow for a parking lot located here just at the southern edge of the city. It's to allow for a parking for a model home. The applicant would like to make it so there's not as much on-street parking. They'd like to remove that from there. They do propose to landscape this area, make it quite nice. There's going to be 8 stalls, with one being ADA accessible as well. And here you can kind of see some of the plantings and stuff that they had planned there. Out there today in the nice freezing cold, it was quite nice. They're starting to fill up that pit, so it's starting to look like it's coming around. So with that, we are recommending approval for this for an initial 6 months. This will be good for 6 months, and then we'll bring it back to you. They can go up to 2 years total. So subject to these 5 conditions, we recommend approval on that. Any questions for me?
Questions for Zach? All right. Is the applicant here this evening? All right. Could you come forward and State your name and your resident for the record.
Yeah, my name is Paul Garbett with Garbett Homes, 284 North West Temple Street.
All right, and have you had an opportunity to review these conditions?
Yes, we have.
And are you going to be able to comply with them?
Yes.
All right. Do you have anything else for the commissioners as far as project goes?
Not at this time.
All right. Any questions from commissioners? All
Pretty
right.
straightforward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will open the meeting for public comment. If there are any public comments, anyone like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back up here for any other discussion or motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit to allow the temporary vehicle parking lot at the property address 709 South Windward Park Drive, subject to the 5 conditions.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any additional discussion? All right, can we call a roll vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, thank you.
Good luck
Good
with
luck.
the subdivision.
Yeah,
That's gonna-
exactly.
It's going to be interesting.
We'll watch for the parked cars. All right, item number 5, Six Flags subdivision, requesting an amendment to the Bradford subdivision to allow a flag lot subdivision to be located at the property address 602 East, 4800 South.
Thank you. So this is a flag lot subdivision at 602 East 4800 South. The property in question, there's a single-family home on the site already. That would remain as a part of the subdivision, and the subdivision would be drawn around it. Funnily enough, you can kind of see almost the area where the flag lot would be created. We'll get to that in just a moment, too. This is in the R18 zone. In all the single-family zones in the city, flag lot subdivision is allowed with these conditions met. A couple of those conditions, as we can talk about, would be that the front lot, the existing lot, needs to maintain the area requirements of the zone, R18, in this case that's 8,000 square feet, and the rear lot needs to be 125% of the requirement. In this case, that's 10,000 square feet. The proposed lots do meet those requirements and exceed them. Proposed lot 1, where the existing home would remain, will be 8,571 square feet, and proposed lot 2, the rear lot, the flag lot, will be 10,000 square feet exactly. One of the other requirements is that 28-foot access is required. 8 feet, the 8 feet of that 28 feet is 4 feet on either side that's landscaped, and then a 20-foot paved access down to the flag portion. That's located here by way of an easement. There's already an existing driveway there. They're going to have to add a little bit to that to make it the requisite 20 feet wide, but most of it's already there, so they've gone ahead to locate the access easement in that area. So it's running across the front lot to serve the rear lot where a new home could be built. The other requirements can easily be met for setbacks. It's the standard setbacks that are required in the zone, 8 feet for side yards that total 20, 25 feet for rear, 25 feet for front setbacks. The existing home can maintain all of those with the lot lines as they're proposed here, and a new home could be built on proposed lot 2 quite easily with those same setbacks. This just shows you, illustrates for you the existing home and those proposed lines. These 2 structures will need to be removed from proposed lot 2 before we record the subdivision. But other than that, that's one of the main conditions that would need to be met. Just to show you a shot of the property there, looking across 4800 South, you can kind of see really easily this site plan located to the right here. That's flipped so that you can see it the same way. So the front setback of that existing home is shown right here. The easement to the rear lot, that's going to run right down there, and then that whole back area is the rear lot. You can see that one of those structures that's going to need to be removed as well. So we are recommending approval. It does meet all the requirements for flag lot subdivisions. We're recommending that the Planning Commission forward recommendation of approval for preliminary and final subdivision to the Mayor's office, and with these 7 conditions as they're shown. Any questions for staff? Thank you.
Questions? All right. Is applicant here? Could you come forward and state your name and address for the record?
I am Craig Ames with the Ames Group, 4738 South, Hidden Woods Lane, just up the street in Murray as well.
All right. And have you had an opportunity to review the conditions?
Yes,
And are you able to comply with those?
I believe so.
All right. Do you have any other information that you'd like to provide us regarding the
Well, I think
project?
the only question I had was the timing of removal of the existing structures, and he said it in his presentation, they have to be done before we're recorded, so
Okay. All right.
we'll comply with that.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners?
Anybody want to
All
buy
right.
a tough shed?
All right. Thank you very much. So I'll open the meeting to public comment. Come forward, please, and state your name and address for the record, and we will listen to your comment.
Mash. I live at 609 East 4800 South, and I just want to I just want to make sure that the ditches run where they are.
All right. Thank you.
We'll have staff address that.
Are there any other public comments? Please come forward.
Hi, my name's David Nickel, and I live at 600 East 4800 South, which is the house west of this lot. So basically, my concerns are where the house is going to be built on the flag lot. As you can see, there's an existing building that's right up next to the property line. So if another house is built right up next to the property line in the back, basically that whole property line is going to be kind of a wall of houses to the east of my house. So basically, that's my concern. So, I mean, it's going to kind of be, kind of concerned what kind of house is going to be built there. Is it going to be a two-story house that's going to block out all the sunlight, and is it privacy issues with the house if it's going to be right on the property line with the existing one that's already there? So basically, that's my concern with that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period and bring it back for staff to answer these items.
Let me see if I can address those concerns real quickly. So this came up in the staff review meeting that we've had. The engineer's comments mentioned the ditches that are in that area. They do fall outside the boundary of the subdivision, so they won't be disturbed, as I understand it. I think Mr. Ames can attest to that if we need further information on it, but my understanding is they won't be disturbed. So as far as the house being located, I'll just reiterate, we do require the removal of these buildings before the subdivision is recorded. So this building will not be in that location anymore before the subdivision is recorded and this becomes a buildable lot. When it becomes a buildable lot, it will have to maintain the same setbacks that any home in this zone would have to maintain: 25 feet for a front yard, 25 feet for a rear yard, 8 feet for side yards, totaling at least 20. It is possible to build a two-story home. 35 feet is the height limit in this zone. Any home in the zone can be 35 feet to the tallest point of the pitch. That's what we allow for everything. We don't do special recommendations or requirements for subdivisions that are flag lots as opposed to regular subdivisions.
And this flag lot's approved for just one house only, correct?
Single homes. We don't do flag lot subdivisions for multifamily or for more than one home. Only a single home. Thank you. That's good clarification. Anything else that is not covered there?
Any other questions for Jared?
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion from commissioners? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for preliminary and final flag lot subdivision approval to the mayor for the property located at 602 East, 4800 South, subject to the 7 conditions in our packet.
All right. I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Motion second. Any other discussion? So, Jared, I take a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Markham.
Yes.
Mr. Ney.
Yes.
Ms. Patterson.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So, good luck with your project. Thank you. All right. Item number 6 Land use text amendment to the Murray City Land Use Ordinance, Section 17.160.050, front setback and outdoor dining.
Thanks. This is a land use ordinance text amendment request that has come from a citizen as opposed to the staff. Sometimes these are text amendments that come from staff. This was initiated by a citizen, the owners and operators of the Prohibition Bar and Grill on 6100 South. And my colors aren't working like they should, but at any rate, this is actually CD zoning. Looks like MG, but it's not. It's CD zoning. And their request is to amend the text of the CD zone, specifically with regard to the front setback. So the front setback requirement in the CD zone currently is 20 feet to a building. That's a building setback. The first 10 feet of that setback has to be landscaping, and then you can start with parking. So for example, if you wanted to set a building back 45 feet or 50 feet, you could have 10 feet of landscaping, and then you could have some parking or access or what have you. A lot of times, and in this case, the building is set back the 20 feet. Sorry, I'm pointing to the wrong building right off the bat. That's great. The building is set back to 20 feet, but there's no parking or anything in front. It's just a landscaped area. The Prohibition has a patio area there, and they would like to cover that. They did come to the city with that request. We informed them that covering that patio extends the building and where we measure the setback, so we couldn't approve it through zoning because it brought the building closer than 20 feet to the street because of the cover for the patio. They sought a variance for it. The variance application was denied. They came back to the city and said, what else could we do? And we just advised them the next thing you could really do is ask to amend the text. We're not in a position to do that as a staff right now. If you want to ask for it, you'll have to write something up and ask. So what they did was make the application that you have before you have in your packets. Their request is essentially to establish a district, and you've seen that area kind of defined in your report. It includes, I don't think I included a slide that shows that district, I apologize, but it includes 6100 South and then going north to another street, which escapes me at the moment.
59th,
Thank you, 59th. So, and then from State Street east to Fashion Boulevard. And creating kind of a restaurants and entertainment district, and saying within that district, even if you're CD zoning, you can do outdoor dining and have a patio and have an extension or an awning or a patio or something that would extend into that 20-foot setback up to a maximum of 10 feet and then still have 10 feet of landscaping. We're reviewing that as staff, and we've written the report that you all have, and the applicants have had a copy of that as well. We do see that there are some possibilities there. We don't want to discourage outdoor dining. That's a nice thing. We're just not sure that we're ready to say that works in this area. There are other implications as well. There are other properties. This is just a shot to show you kind of the Prohibition is located in the bottom of this office building, so they're the only user that would have that kind of an outdoor patio or that desire for an outdoor patio or dining. Other buildings on the street are strictly office uses, medical, things like that. Nearby, and this is the area as you're looking at their building, that's the patio area that they have, and this level right here, that would be removed and the patio would be extended like it's shown in these drawings here over that patio. This is the existing patio area that they currently have that they want to cover and have kind of an outdoor area they can have people in 3 seasons of the year. Other parts of the city, it's not as cut and dry. The buildings aren't just 20 feet back, they're further back. As in the case of McDonald's, for example, they have the 10 feet of landscaping, but then they're further back and they have a drive-through. So you're not going to see that same request here or in many other areas as well. There are those situations though where it does occur, and we don't necessarily want to discourage it out of hand, or we just are asking as staff for more time to consider the different implications that it might have. Commissioner Milkevich is not able to be here tonight. She did call me earlier to express one of her concerns or issues. She's not opposed to the idea, but she wanted to make sure I got on record for it to all of you that one of her concerns is that there's no language stating that the new structure, the awning, the patio cover, whatever it is, should be architecturally sound and should be architecturally similar to the building that it's attached to, so we don't have simple sort of metal awnings stuck everywhere and into within 10 feet everywhere all through the CD zone. That was a concern that she had. Is it going to be aesthetically pleasing everywhere? We need some architectural controls. That's not here. We want some time to consider that, among other things. We do also feel like we need to talk to the City Council before it goes much further. We had in our initial recommendation recommended to you that we continue the hearing and continue it to March 21st. We are not going to be able to do the things we need to do, including having some conversations with City Council about what they're okay with and not okay with, what we should maybe do here prior to March 21st. We're gonna need to ask you to give us more time on that, and maybe continue it to the April, I'm gonna get the date wrong,
18th.
April 18th meeting. We should be able to do what we would need to do on staff's end, and then get some input from council members as well, so that we know we're going forward with something that might make sense. That's in addition to any comments that you might have tonight after this first part of this public hearing that we would need to assimilate as well, and start looking at, and make sure that it's something that's not hijacking the applicant's application too far afield from what they want to do, if that makes some sense. So that is what we're recommending. We see some merit in the idea. We're not ready to recommend approval of it to you as a staff right now. Of course, that's your decision to make, but that's our report to you and our recommendation, that we table the item, continue the hearing to April 18th. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for staff right now?
Questions?
Sure. Outside of the MCCD zone, outdoor dining, is it allowed anywhere else?
It's not disallowed anywhere. The issue is covering it. We don't say you can't have outdoor dining in the CD zone. It's not that explicit. It just says we can't extend the building into that 20 feet. So you could have it behind the 20 feet, and many businesses do have outdoor dining that way, even covered outdoor dining, but it's at least 20 feet back. In the case of prohibition and probably many other buildings, this is something we haven't had time to really assess yet. You wouldn't be able to do outdoor dining in the front setback area. They're not set back that far. They're 20 feet back, and then landscaping. So they would need this kind of thing, just like prohibition does. We want to assess all of those buildings and see how many we're really talking about. We're not ready to tell you a number on that. But the zone itself doesn't prohibit outdoor dining. It's just the issue of how close to the street it can be with that covered
And
patio.
covered. You might have addressed this, but we're talking about changing it for the whole zone, or are we talking about it would be if they're too close to the street within the 20-foot setback, we're talking about they would get a conditional approval, or
Yeah.
whatever we recommend would be zone wide?
Well, that's part of the issue, actually,
Okay.
that we have. What the applicants have proposed is that we just establish this district and say within this geographic area, a restaurant or entertainment facility can have outdoor dining, and cover that outdoor dining up to 10 feet, up to within 10 feet of the property line, but only in this district and only if you're a restaurant or a bar. We're not sure that it shouldn't be throughout the
More
whole zone, or
broad.
maybe in a bigger area or something. Are we excluding properties that would benefit from it as well? We want to look at that carefully, and we haven't had time to do that.
Okay.
yet. So that's part of the issue too. But the way it's strictly written tonight, it would just be in this simple geographic area where it would be allowed.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? Questions for Jared?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is the applicant here? Yes, could you come forward and provide your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is, let me put that up there. My name is Nate Porter. I live at 11468 Sandy, Utah, and here with my Prohibition partners here today. We appreciate the staff's recommendation, and we agree with that, and we kind of anticipated that for it to be tabled. Not trying to tell you guys how to do your job, so we would invite those discussions to keep talking about it and make something that works for everybody. Let me explain what we're trying to do. We're trying to make Murray's Restaurant and Entertainment District, which is its own district by itself. Already in the city of Murray, you've got the historic district, or the downtown district as you call it, which there are no setbacks, where you have a restaurant that could be up and on the sidewalk, which is fine. We argue that we are downtown, and everything around Fashion Place Mall is downtown. And that is where we feel that most of the people that visit Murray or Murray's restaurants, that's what they know of Murray. So what we're trying to do is create that downtown vibe, that downtown feeling where you are driving by or walking by and you see outdoor diners and you see that energy and that excitement. Offhand, the only restaurants that I can think of that this might affect would be us. Jinya is also in the lines that we drew. You guys are welcome to redraw lines. Jinya, for instance, that's going to, if they were to be able to cover that patio, that's going to increase their seating by about 30%.
Yeah, I was going to say it's almost double that.
Yeah, it is.
Tiny.
And I'll be honest with us, it's going to increase our seating by about 20%. Right now, this patio has always been in existence. It is set back 10 feet, and there is some Of course, there is some landscaping, and we would make that even better. And that's been in existence since as long as that building's been there. So we're trying to cover that, that patio with a beautiful patio that's made out of wood. It has that period look to it. It's all made out of wood. We're Prohibition, so we're a 1920s restaurant, and it is going to be absolutely beautiful. This is a $30,000 project. That how this all started is actually we applied for a permit, and the contractor who applied for that permit is how we found out about all of this stuff here. Couple things. Number 2, so yeah, we would have that beautiful landscape, but instead of it being parking, of course, it just has that energy of a patio. Trying to create that downtown feel. We service about 2,000 residents a week. Most of those, of course, are from the surrounding area. And we did get a petition from all of our neighbors, which 200 people signed. More importantly, that wasn't just customers. We actually went around to our neighbors. Everybody on our block was, of course, supportive, because one of the things that we hear most is when people enter our restaurant, which I hope you do one day, when people enter our restaurant, they're surprised at the beauty of it. It's just filled with antiques. It's gorgeous on the inside, but if you look at those pictures driving by, that's not the picture that you get. And we've been dealing with that since we've opened 2 years ago, trying to really fix up the front and have better curb appeal, if you will, where people drive by, they see we have a beautiful Model A car that's there, so that definitely helps attract some attention. But nothing like a beautiful patio with people dining. That would certainly help our business more than I could tell you. So we are certainly up for tabling it and continuing this conversation. You guys can look into all the implications that this could happen citywide. And if you do, we look forward to continuing the conversation and re-meeting with you on April 18th, if that's the case. So.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Not right now.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I will open this item up for public comment. There's no public left. So I will close public comment and bring it back up here for discussion with the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is it's a very worthwhile thing to discuss, and I think it's important enough that we put our best effort forth and give staff enough time to really digest this, look at the boundaries, look at the merits of creating even an entertainment district per se. There may be other ways that this could be accommodated as well if it turns out that an entertainment district might not be the best thing. Who knows? But I have been in your restaurant. It is very nice. The food's very good. We had a very nice time. And I would love to see something like this in this area. And I think it can be done properly. It's just that something of this size and this scope really needs to be examined by the professionals. And we have an excellent staff. And I think City Council feels the same way. And I'm looking forward to seeing what recommendations they come back with in a month and a half. And we can hopefully make something that will benefit you and the city as a whole.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question of staff? What do we have for GO over on Fashion Boulevard? Isn't that GO along Fashion?
On the other side of Fashion Boulevard, east of Fashion Boulevard, that is geo zoning. Same setback, 20 feet. And it's exactly the same, 20 feet for landscaping, and then you can do something else if you're building setback.
And the west side of Fashion Boulevard is then just CD?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All the west side is CD. East of it, you have some geo.
Okay. I've tried to go to your restaurant. I can only ever find a pharmacy, so sorry. I just say I've got some concerns with extending the district, and you guys are not opposed to borders. I don't know that 5900 South proper is really going to be appropriate. I don't know that there's a lot that's happening there. I think there's a lot of redevelopment that's going to be happening in the greater block where Shopco properties are right now. Nobody knows what that's going to look like. It may stay exactly as it is for the next 10 years. I can't imagine that property is going to stay like that for that long. I hope not as well. And then Fashion Boulevard, I don't know if that's ever really going to get away from the medical offices and that we see along there. But I do see merits to you guys having the outdoor dining. We know it's successful in other districts, right? We've seen it over at Ice House and soon to be, I can't remember what the other.
Club 48.
Club 48 is also going to be doing something here soon. I like that it adds vibrancy to the street. I'm not opposed to what you guys are coming forward with. I think staff needs a minute to really look over this. Staff has gone in and given us some preliminary information from a number of cities. Some of the language that I've seen from some of the other cities looks reasonable, and I do trust staff's judgment on this. So,
All right.
Yeah. I would just echo, I think, what's already been said. I thought it was really interesting to see how many cities do have some kind of provision to allow some kind of covered outdoor patio eating area. I really like the plan that's been presented, and I think that looks really good. I think my problem with it is I don't agree in creating a Murray restaurant and entertainment district. I feel like this is something that could apply more citywide, and I don't think that we need to restrict it to just this little entertainment district. If there is a restaurant that's within the 20 feet that can meet the regulations that the city puts out, I think, having covered eating area should be allowed anywhere that meets the requirement. So I think that would be my recommendation moving forward, is that staff looks at how to write the language that would be more broadly allowed to have some kind of awning. In our packet was included some things that other cities have written, and I know that they kind of mentioned that they like Sandy's, and I really like Sandy's. I think it talks about recessed plazas, courtyards, trellises are encouraged, having some kind of recessed place that somebody can eat outside and not restricting it to an entertainment district or the MCCD or whatever. If they're meeting their requirements, I think any restaurant should be allowed to have that covered patio and enhance their restaurant, increase their seating ability. I think that should be more broadly looked at.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm in agreement with everyone else too. I think it's an idea whose time has come, and we just need to get the language done correctly. And
And I love the restaurant. It's great. It's fun. I think this really intriguing application. I think the staff believes it is also. I think there's a lot more at stake here that you understand. We'll perhaps hear a motion here to do a little more study and research with staff and other city elected officials, city council, and see if we can put this in place for either yourselves or for a special district, whatever the rest of the staff and city comes up with. So, but I appreciate your taking the time to put this in front of us.
Yeah.
I think it's
yes, very
really,
much so.
Worthy
really,
cause, for sure.
Murray's growing, we all know that, and there's plenty of opportunity for more entertainment areas. So thank you. And with that, if there's any additional discussion, I'd entertain a motion from someone.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion. We would like to, based on the above findings, we would like to recommend that we continue the public hearing to the regularly scheduled meeting on April 18th, 2019, allowing the staff time to review with city officials, do additional research, and make a recommendation.
All right, have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion is second. Any additional discussion? So Jared, do you call vote?
Yes.
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 And I would say yes, and thank you for bringing your business to Murray. It's great business, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, our last agenda item. Murray Central Station Small Area Plan Recommendation.
So I was just going to take a moment and introduce the item for you, and Zach is going to get the other slideshow up for you. This is the draft Murray Central Station Small Area Plan, or Station Area Plan. We've been working on it for a number of months. You'll all remember Travis, Commissioner Ney was on our steering committee all along the way. We're excited about the plan. We got a Transportation and Land Use Connection grant to do this plan. Mr. Vlasic, Mark Vlasic, was our lead consultant on the project, and he's here tonight to present it to you as a draft. What we're hoping is that we can take this forward with a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the City Council to show it to them in some work sessions and get them comfortable with it and have it adopted by resolution. So it's not going to become, just to clarify, it's not going to become section 17 point something of our ordinance. It's going to be another long-range planning tool that we use as we consider options to change things in our zoning code, or add width to right-of-ways, or push people to orient buildings in certain ways, and you'll see some of that from Mr. Vlasic tonight. So with that, I'll turn the time over to him and let you hear from him. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. Again, my name is Mark Vlasic. I'm from Landmark Design. We're a landscape architecture and planning firm. We actually did one of your not this general plan, but your previous general plan many years ago. We've worked in Murray over the years. As Jared mentioned, we received this grant to move forward and assist you with it. Our team included GSBS architects who did a lot of the urban design and particularly the economic assessment, and Township and Range, their transportation planners, and then our staff who are planners and designers. So just so that, I don't know how many of you have actually read through it in detail, but the key points of the plan is that we sort of had this 5-point agenda with it. It was, first of all, to assess the built environment. It's a very challenging area, very complicated area, and understand what that meant for future development. In particular, that was because of the environmental implications of the smelter overlay district and the environmental mitigation that took place about 20 years ago, and to see what we could actually do and what we couldn't do. So that was the beginning of our process, was really focusing on environmental do's and don'ts. We then assessed the market potential, what the market was for different types of uses, and how they could be reflected in the development in the area. And then understanding more about transportation, access to the site, how people can get around, how to make the desire was sort of more of a walkable type of a district, how that's going to happen. And then just to make sure that as future development proposals came forward, that there were policies and vision in place to help direct that type of development in the future. The study area was very broad in the beginning, and as you can see where it says Murray Central Station, that was where we ended up focusing more as we moved forward. We developed over the process, which has been going on for a little bit more than a year, a bunch of principles so that we could maintain our alignment throughout the process. So the first were the general principles, is to make sure that the design of the station was aligned with your general plan vision, to not conflict with the general plan. That we wanted to make sure that we leveraged investments in order to make it a truly walkable center, and that it should become a quality station in recognition of the constraints and limitations. And that really this idea of a great place, a great station, a great space, a great public space, and that it's nothing that was to necessarily be done in a short term, but this was really a long-term plan to keep that in mind. And this idea of creating from a station that people don't really notice to something that was very iconic, and that people will want to come here for more than just transit, but it serves as sort of, the transit serves as the catalyst for development and for getting people to the area. We then developed principles for sort of the key elements. The first was the environmental, and the key principles there were basically to protect human health and to make sure that the uses that were there were compatible with the environmental conditions, and to acknowledge and recognize the mitigation and cleanup decisions that happened, and to make sure that whatever we did didn't compromise them. From the environmental perspective, As you can see, the colored area in this drawing is where the mitigation has taken place, and it basically determines what can and can't happen there currently and in the future. As we get into more detail, there's basically 4 different categories of contaminated land. Some of it, the most contaminated land, the most difficult, has been moved off the site. But there are other areas that have been capped and that we can't really mess with. And so as we moved forward, we took that on board, and you'll see as we look at the concept that we came up with, that underlying understanding helped us formulate an approach to how to deal with the area and turn it into something that it was positive. From an economic point of view, our principles were to create value and to make it a more, a place that was more than what it is today, to leverage your existing investment and also take a long-term perspective. So again, nothing that necessarily is going to happen overnight, but to take your time and make sure that whatever comes in here is going to fit the long-term needs of this city and the district, and to keep it flexible as we move forward, as things change and conditions change, that they could be incorporated. And then finally, to work with development partners. This is something that the city won't be able to probably do on its own. You have partners such as UTA and the private partners that make sure that everybody comes to the table. I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail. This is in your in the plan. Been told I have 10 to 15 minutes. I might know I'm already going long here, but I did want to point out that as we looked into this, we looked very carefully at your growth potential. And to sort of summarize this chart and the next chart is that the growth that's likely to be happening in the next 20 years or so, 25 years, is the bulk of your growth is going to be happening in this area. And that's both for population and for employment. And so that's a very important consideration as we move forward, that this is the place that is going to be changing, that there is a lot of attraction for something to happen here. And as we look at sort of what you have in your current jobs, that you can see about 1/3 of all the current jobs happen in this location. And as we look again into the future, that a much larger percentage of the future jobs are going to be coming here than currently exist in the rest of the city. So again, this is all pointing to this becoming a place that has great demand, both from, and particularly as we can imagine, in the medical support sort of uses, but other things that come along with that. We then took a look at your current ownership to understand who was owning properties and what properties were sort of things that we were looking at of whether they had potential for redevelopment. We also then looked what we call a building to land value ratio. It's basically to determine underdeveloped properties. So the lighter the color on this map, the more potential it had for being developed. Actually, the white properties are ones that have a 0 level, meaning it's vacant at the moment, or as a parking lot, something like that. And it has a great potential for development where it's dark color or darker blue color. It's highly invested and it's not likely to redevelop.
I would say so.
Right. And this just shows, this chart here, this pie chart shows the sort of breakdown of the different types of uses within those underutilized properties. So what came out of that is there's about 324 acres of potential redevelopment properties that we looked at. The bulk of that is residential, and then you have some office and retail added to that. That being said, we met with IMC, just first of all to understand their position, and basically they have a 100-year plan ahead of them. They don't intend to, they may change over time, but it doesn't really, what comes out of this plan they didn't see as affecting them, or that they were really a partner in this, other than they are beneficiaries of the transit that's there. They want to make sure that they fit in well, but they know that they could, their whole market is changing right now because of the changes in the medical industry. So they just want to make sure they bought this campus to make sure they had plenty of room to do what they need to do for the future, and they may move buildings around or add more to them, but it's really their decisions as a medical provider. And so we entered this thinking that perhaps we'd be able to play around with their parking lots and that, and they told us in no uncertain terms that really wasn't on the table, which was good to know. We took that off the table. The other thing that came out of our assessment of the environmental conditions was that, yes, perhaps residential could come in here because we were looking at a mixed-use district, but after a really careful look at it, it was decided that we weren't going to mess with residential in this area. It was too risky. It has too many potential downfalls and potential multi-million-dollar costs to open up sort of a can of worms, and so that residential requires a whole different level of cleanup than you have today for the areas where that was potential. So we took that off the table and said, in order to create a mixed-use district, that residential will go where the property is clean or the area is clean, and this will be more focused on commercial office type uses. And then as we looked into it, it was very clear that there were areas that really we should be focusing on a direction as we created a design concept. So that was really the station and Vine Street as sort of a connector of connecting the station to State Street in the city core and to the areas west. And so that really our focus developed on one concept, and we have, we developed two variations of it. So from a transportation point of view, it was really about creating, again, a walkable urban place, a way of connecting to other destinations in the area, make it a great multimodal, so all types of modes of transportation and transit where they come together, but to emphasize walkability and creating this a place where people want to get out of their cars or want to actually walk from place to place rather than just driving to and from a parking lot. So as we analyzed it, we took sort of this hybrid diagram here. It looks at land use and then at conditions that were either opportunities or constraints. There's a lot of barriers in the area, the tracks themselves, the freeway, major streets, major roads. The creek, even though it on paper looks like quite an opportunity, is very segmented, and it's going to be very challenging to overcome the segmentation in order to get it to become a true green space that would be continuous. So there were, and then as you see in gray, all of the area that was part of the environmental assessment area, really there's not a whole lot that's in play there either. We also took a look at the sites that were either had projects under construction or that were recently developed or that are soon to be developed to know where there might be some catalysts of how to connect with them. That became this concept diagram. Basically, you can see that Vine Street becomes sort of the connector to the station, and then based on the age and the value of the property around it, we sort of focused on primary redevelopment areas being the quickest and the easiest, and then more long-term redevelopment. So we start from a primary redevelopment, secondary, and then all the way to what we call a tertiary redevelopment, something that's probably got a building on there that's going to live another 20, 30, 40 years and isn't likely to redevelop quickly, but if it does and when it does, there would be rules and ideas for it for the future. From a transportation point of view, it's really about this Vine Street and how to, it has many different widths and right-of-way sort of roles that it plays. We worked very closely with your engineering staff. There's a real challenge in creating this into a walkable street and at the same time accommodating all of the traffic needs that are coming along. And so we really focused on figuring out what those different segments were and different approaches for each of them. So the key findings that came out were that we eliminated residential in the core area. We the remediated areas, most of them will remain is. We don't want to open up that sort of challenge. And then that there is some significant redevelopment for residential or just development for residential. That's primarily, we focused it in the in transitioning industrial area to the north. and business demand as well. And then as I mentioned, the IMC properties, we sort of took them off the table, and what will happen there will be through initiatives through the IMC people. And that the lack of developable land really focuses on the station itself and on to Vine Street to create this sort of district to link to the rest of the city, and that that all of these have to be aligned with the overall transportation goals and visions of the city. So with this being focused very much on the station, we developed two, it's really one concept, but two iterations of it. The first one really focuses on the station being, that your parking areas stay somewhat the same, but because we're rebuilding more around the west side of the tracks, that we're taking out some of the parking. As we worked with UTA, they really wanted us to maintain the number of parking spaces that are there now, so there was a need to put in structured parking and to connect the parking lots on either side and the drop-off areas with a very significant bridge that basically is located on the south end of the site. That bridge actually hops over all of the tracks eventually and connects to the development to the west, where we have more commercial office type uses. So it's a way of people to come use the station and use it as a catalyst. And these concepts that we developed here were more massing so that you can see the size of the parking structures, the buildings themselves, and the types of general uses that were happening in them. And again, these all were out of the projections from our economic team of what they think could be accommodated and should be accommodated in the area. And this is a vision of what that bridge might look like. It wouldn't really look like what you would think of a bridge. It would be buildings and offices and things happening along the sides of it. So something that's really urban and helping to make this an interesting district. The second concept basically took a different approach, where the bulk of the station itself serves as a station. It really is we're thinking of the presence when you see it from the street is what we would think of a classic station, but with a modern face to it. Your drop-off, rather than being on the west side close to the building, is actually on the east side of the rail lines, and that there is a connection directly onto the rail platform for all the different modes of rail transit. And so the idea is that you have all your parking and some commercial type uses and office uses on the east side, but they merge directly over to the station building. So it becomes a really big player in the area. And as you can see, these precedent images are pretty, I've been told they might be a little bit grandiose, so you need to tone them down, but it was really to capture a vision that this idea of creating an iconic building is something that just doesn't happen without some thought to it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with sort of a simple shed structure or something like that. So these are from communities that have put a little bit more into it, and they've taken their time to do it, and we see that that could be a possibility here. And as you see, the massing here is the parking lot. The structure to the south gets a little bit bigger on this one, and that because we're shifting some of the parking and from the station itself over to the other side. And so that, again, the parking is all expressed here primarily in square feet, but it's about 350 square feet per use, so there's 300 parking spaces required. And this is a vision looking from Vine Street at the station itself. So it's, great public spaces related to it. It's a place where people will walk and drive and bike and take all the different modes of transit in as they come to and from and get onto the front runner and onto light rail. We then took a look at the streets and how to create a more walkable corridor, and came up with the idea of everything from treating your intersections better so it's safer and more easier for the public to cross the streets, create a more walkable frontage, so creating districts with great sidewalks, plazas, small patios where you can fit them in, and street trees, a real green corridor, other amenities such as lighting, public art, that sort of thing, so it becomes a really discernible district and then just have places to really, where you can support cycling in particular as a way of getting around, and places to catch the different modes of transit. A lot of the things that are looking at the future of Lyft and Uber, and even somewhere down the road, the self-driving vehicles that are starting to pop up now. So it's really about a place for the future. The challenge, though, is how do we actually apply it here, where we have these variable conditions and a limited public right-of-way. And after a lot of soul searching, it was really to show a consistent, realistic vision of what the sections would look like. So the areas that are in color here are basically the right-of-way that we have today, in order to add some of those extra amenities such as plazas and some of the other sort of things that will create a better street here. That may have to happen on the private right-of-way as buildings start developing. But there is an opportunity for that to happen. And we did it for each of the segments to show that we're trying to be realistic, but at the same time somewhat visionary as this moves forward. And here's the sample of, we didn't even have to take it before and after. This is actually real. So this is what it looked like before and what it looks like today. And that's sort of the beginning, the nucleus of the transformation of this area into a really positive, contributing district to the city. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. That's great.
I hope I live long enough to see some of this implemented, and that the current staff is here implementing it. How's that?
Questions for Mark? Ideas?
It's very impressive. No,
Great
ideas.
presentation.
Are you kidding?
Ideas?
Yeah, we'll tell him how to do his job.
Well, one question. Are there any policies right now that are roadblocks to the implementation of this that you're aware of?
Not that we're aware of. Your zoning is, we are actually asked that by UTA as we move forward, because they said this is sort of light on policy. And I said, well, that's because your policies right now are fairly wide open. You have almost no height limit, and you have, so that it gives a lot of, this area has been set up for something like this already. So we really didn't see any.
So I should know this, but how far down or how far west does the MCCD come? Okay.
So, I don't know if that's, can't really see it very well on the map, but the MCCD zone itself, the western extent of it is Box Elder Street, the west side of Box Elder Street.
Yeah.
Where the soccer, indoor soccer building is, yeah, by way of reference.
Shared a lot of the area comes in the mixed use.
Yeah, so that the MCCD part, and what Jim's talking about too, is that in that same study area, we also have the mixed use zone. So, for example, the last picture that Mark showed you is actually the mixed use zone, and that street frontage treatment is the result of the mixed use zone.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we're looking at on that Vine Street corridor is to say, that's great, except that the mixed use doesn't quite emphasize the plaza elements of the pedestrian zone. It doesn't treat it quite as well as the MCCD zone does. So maybe we, as a guiding document, one example would be maybe we adjust that in the mixed use zone as it's in this study area within a quarter mile of the station. Maybe we want the mixed use zone frontages to be more like the MCCD, where you gear more toward plaza situations where you have street trees and tree wells and more space for street furnishings and things, as opposed to we're going to have that you can do it, but you can also just do kind of traditional landscaping like they've done in front of the EMI building. On the other side, it will be more like the MCCD. You'll see sort of all cement with some tree wells and on-street parking and such on the north side. But that's something that we might want to adjust. But like Mark said, mostly the policies are supportive. The kinds of things we're trying to do. Our bigger constraints that were identified are really the environmental factors
And the hospital.
Your boss is not wanting to play.
Yeah, so too, my boss is not wanting to play. I'd really love to see the city come up with some sort of policy that says that if in that hospital zone, if they are attempting to build additional parking structures that front onto any of the streets, that they're required to have ground floor commercial something, so that we don't just have blocks and blocks and blocks of parking lot. And
that's a good point, and it's not really part of the presentation. I hope I'm not yakking a lot, but I'll be quick. to that same point, one of the guiding sort of outcomes of this is that parking structures don't have to be ugly, and they shouldn't be in this district. That's
Right.
another adjustment we would probably want to make. They can be decorative, they can have false fronts, or they can have realistic, they can have.
Well, they could even be skinned with commercial or retail uses.
That should be.
Can I mention something? So, Travis, your questions are right on point. And so really this document is the vision for the area. And we have to look at using it as a tool, of course. This document, this vision is a tool for future development of the area. We know the large property owners are IMC and UTA for the most part. What can we take from this vision and put in our code? You know, those are the things that we'll be studying and bringing back to you in the future. But this is step one, and then we'll decide what those things are, the elements from this plan that we need to codify. Other things may be in the code already, but what can we do, you know, so everybody catches the vision and has an understanding of how this area should be developed. So.
One thing I didn't mention in this presentation was the last chapter is some fairly visionary design standards as well. Those could be, I think that's something that we all agreed that needed some additional work in the future. These are fairly big picture ideas, but still gives a sense of the things that would be important to address as zoning and any other sort of guidelines are developed for the area.
I noticed in both of your proposals for stations that you've included access over to, is it Commerce?
Mm-hmm.
How important is that to you, to be able to have a tighter fabric?
No, it was very important. It's, again, about creating that synergy and that connection and the linkages between the surrounding areas and downtown. And we were very careful not to sort of tread on the other established nearby districts, your historic district, rather that we kind of deferred to them as we got close to them. But the idea that you know, what's across the street or down the street is very important to this project. And we tried to establish what we call the zone of influence of the station. How far do you go before the station is no longer sort of the main player that is drawing people in? And we, you know, using standard thought of if you're walking to it, it's somewhere less than a half mile. And so that's why then the other new districts emerge. The residential district, that since we're not going to have residential here, it'll be really great to get residential as nearby as possible, which that area just to the north and sort of directly north of it is just shouting out for redevelopment into a residential neighborhood. It doesn't mean it wouldn't have any commercial, but it wouldn't have the same level. Your real focus on commercial would be in this area, I would think.
And Mark, that's a great point because, you know, we have those edges, those edge type uses that call for residential, but you can see in the overhead, the bottom picture, EMI is finished. Murray Crossing is currently under construction, and probably by this summer, the landscaping and the amenities and some of the street type things will be in place. It'll paint a different picture and be very nice. And that's right close to the station. That's very walkable. It's right across the street to get to the station. So, and that's a lot of units. It's 270 plus units. So we do have those opportunities, and we have others on the edges that will come in the future. But because we're in that smelter site overlay district for the most part on the interior, we're just not going to get those residential uses. But UTA, you know, they basically have the opportunity at some point to reinvest, redevelop the area, and redo their station. You know, they'll have an empty canvas at some point to realize their vision for that particular site.
Any thoughts given to the properties south of 53rd? I know it's kind of just on the border of the zone, but it's been a problematic neighborhood. I know that we had some hopes that maybe we would get a little more from this plan for those folks. Do we have next steps, or have we just realized at this point that the office developments that are going in there now are the new norm for that, and that we're kind of just not able to help much?
Most of that area is under development.
Right.
Most of the stuff that was vacant when we first started contemplating this has been purchased and broken ground on, and the ones that you haven't seen ground broken on are their site planned and approved for. So most of that's happened. further on, there's still a lot to do as Riley Lane continues south and American Avenue and all those would benefit and that residential neighborhood would stabilize if there's some reinvestment in Riley Lane and some of those other areas just to the west there. But that's outside of the study.
That's beyond the limits of this study.
Right.
Yeah.
Part inside is all under development or site plan.
We did want, though, to make sure whatever went in there, if it was commercial or office, we're assuming it's office type uses because of what's happening, but we did want to have a strong connection to the station. We didn't want to have people to walk all the way on the east side of the tracks down to 53rd and over. That's why, as you see, we have a very grandiose bridge and a more simple bridge, but we felt like that connection was critical because the more people we can get riding transit and to get away from surface parking and to get more engagement in the area and having them to come and have lunch and spend dinner and come to the evenings as well. This might become, to the last topic, we'll get it right from the beginning and incorporate outdoor dining right onto the street from the beginning in this area. So I think that's what we're envisioning is as many people and as many bodies passing through that station area and dispersing wherever they need to go from there and make it easy for them to do that.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks for all the work
Yes,
on it.
very impressive.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd remind everybody, it's the only one of two, I guess three, front-runner stations between Sandy and downtown, so.
The only one with BRT and Lime Rail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
The only one with BRT connections and light
Yep.
rail and commuter.
And commuter rail, so all three modes.
yep,
That they're
it's a big deal.
using for the most
So-
part, so.
Other thoughts from the commission? What would you like to do with this topic?
Need a recommendation.
If I may, make a suggestion. So just as, and I didn't give you a good recommendation like normally you like to write a recommendation, kind of drop the ball on that for you. What we're really looking for, if you're comfortable with the draft, is a recommendation to send it to the council with a recommendation that they approve it or adopt it by resolution so that we can start using it to back up some of our decisions.
Okay. All right, thanks, Jared. Do you have a motion for that?
Yeah, I'll fumble it, but Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we forward the plan to the city council to consider for resolution and adoption.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was a good motion. Other discussion? All right, Jared, could you call a vote?
I will, thank you. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Hacker.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark, appreciate it. I know there's a lot of work that went into that plan, and it's pretty cool, so.
I hope it all happens.
All right, any other business?
Do you have anything, Jared?
Well, I do have one.
You
Now
just
that you
said you
mention it.
didn't.
Too late.
Do you? If you have something, go ahead.
No, I really don't.
Okay. Just our next meeting is on March 7th. So the dates in March, the 7th and 21st, are the same as they were in February. So we'll see you in a couple weeks on March 7th. Thank you for your good work.
All right,
Thanks.
Motion to adjourn.
all right, second?
Second.
All right, thank you, and we are adjourned.